Thank you out there for joining us for another live episode of the Pursuit of Purpose. What are we doing? Live stream podcast. Our topic of discussion for our series currently is
it right?
No, we're in fatherhood.
Oh, we're in fatherhood.
Yeah, we're talking about dads. But Chuck will catch up with us sooner or later, and that's okay. But we're talking about being a dad.
Yeah.
And the differences in becoming a father, which any male human with sperm can do, and then actually being a dad and experiencing the gift of fatherhood. Okay. So in today's episode, I got a couple of things that I want to talk about. And number one is expectations. Expectations. I want to talk about the expectations that fathers, whether they be present or absent, the expectations that they place on their children, and then the expectations that kids have for their dads. And then we're going to segue from expectations into respect. Okay.
Okay.
So first, let's talk about the expectations that fathers have for their kids. Because as a dad, we view our kids a lot of times as little ambassadors of us.
Oh yeah, little people with our faces.
We see them as we have multiplied ourselves, and now we're sending our representatives out into the world, and we want them to get some act right, so that people think well of us.
That it does come back to reflect on us, and we're not honest if we don't really truly believe that. We're not being honest. We do want them to reflect the best of us.
So the question that I have is that entirely right and fair that we put that pressure on them, that they have to carry the burden of our identity out into the world before they even know who they are?
Oh, seems like a lot when you put it like that.
Yeah. So here we are, whatever age we procreate, whatever age, but we've already got a jump start on them.
Yes.
Right? We have already built a life of experience, whether you be a young dad or a dad, later in life. You've already got at least a decade and a half before, hopefully a couple of decades behind you.
Let's hope that's the
list. Hopefully you got a couple of decades behind you of living.
Right.
And at that moment, when you become a dad, you take that 20 years or so, give or take, and you seem to, or at least I did, I don't know if you're guilty of this, but I encapsulated that 20 years worth of experience. And I said, okay, to this child, you're going to carry it. I'm going to put that 20 years worth of experience into you, and you better take it and run with it and do right with it.
Right. Maybe even better.
Hopefully even better.
But I think that's really the perception. I know as a dad, and I presume other dads are out there, looked at this little baby, in this case, let's say a baby boy. And I looked at this son and I said to myself, this person better be a better version of me. Whether I said it out loud or not, that's what I wanted. Because I know all of my failings. They wake me up in the middle of the night.
Right.
And I want this child to be void of that. Now, that's not even realistic, but I think that begins the pressure. Then we start putting this ambassador pressure on this child to represent the better version of what I wished I was.
And it's a fascinating thing because for dads who are closer to what we call traditional in America, like I hope to consider myself somewhat of a traditional dad. We think, sometimes selfishly, I think, but I think that I'm training my kid to learn how to discover their own identity. But the truth is, from the get-go, we've decided that they're going to be a part of our identity.
Yes.
And that, looking back on it, seems like such a pressure. It seems like it's not really fair or right.
Right.
And I could be wrong now. I don't know. Maybe in my older age, I've gotten soft, Chuck. I don't know, but I would love to hear. I mean, what do you think about
Well,
that?
I think I'll try to use, I guess, an example that I think a lot of our parents on the call can relate to. So you last night, y'all had a ball game,
Yep,
baseball game. So you're out at the park, and there's nothing but parents and kids out there by and large.
that's
Maybe a
right.
few grandparents. A few people just pull over just because they see the lights. People are out there because of a purpose,
That's right.
and you start noticing, and I know you do because you're an excellent people watcher, and you're probably watching the interaction of a lot of these parents, more specifically fathers, and their sons out there participate. And some of them are probably pretty casual, like, yeah, go have fun, but
Right.
there's probably others that are putting this tremendous pressure on their kid to represent not just their playability, but their character.
Yes.
Stop throwing the bat and fussing and hollering and all those sorts of things. And there's all kind of versions of that. Maybe they're getting upset with their child. Maybe they're getting upset with the coach or the umpire,
That's right.
and they're looking for justice. They're looking for all these things. But maybe what they're doing is they feel this pressure to overcompensate for what they don't see in their kid.
Yes.
So I'm kind of using that as an example, if you will, of putting this terrible, unnecessary pressure on a child to perform, not just athletically, but also characteristically.
So how do we flip that? That's the real question. Like I've been guilty of that. I admit it. I have done this, but we we get caught up in living vicariously through our kids,
Yes.
and even worse, we we are harder on them because we are trying to compensate for where we failed.
Right.
So how do we balance being a dad, a successful, good, balanced dad, loving your kid with discipline and structure
Mm-hmm.
against that, against living vicariously through them and over pressuring them to
Right.
be better than us?
Right. Well, I can tell you if we follow the weed out process, this is just my opinion since you're asking. If we follow the weed out process, I would like for more parents to weed out this destructive criticism. If there's any kind of criticism, let's form some constructive ways. How many times have I walked to the parking lot and all I hear are parents talking to their child about what the kid didn't do? You missed that play.
Right.
You this, you that, you did all these negatives, and I'm thinking this kid is going to find this sport miserable. Yeah, I'm just using sport. It could be anything, but they're going to find this a miserable experience, even in schoolwork or whatever. Like, well, man, if I can't do anything to please you, why do I go down there?
What's the purpose?
What's the purpose? And so maybe that's a challenge of our conversations: is how do we encourage these parents to transform that into a positive experience, even if it has a corrective nature to it.
Well, so you brought up the baseball game last night. And for those of you in the audience that don't know, my wife and I basically have a team of kids. We have a lot of kids, but our youngest one, he just turned 7 years old last week, and he plays coach pitch little league baseball. Last night something happened, and it brings this comes to mind as we talk about this. He was up to bat, and every kid on the team, of course, had batted and everything, and it's a very young team compared to the other teams, and he's up to bat, and he strikes, he swings the bat and misses the ball, and then he does it again, and then he does it a third time. After he does it, I watch, and I'm yelling, "Good job!" I was saying, "Good job! You swung at the ball, great job!" All that kind of stuff. But I watched when he was done. He put the bat down, and he got mad at himself. You could see he was completely critical of himself and telling himself that he failed, that he didn't do a good job.
Oh man.
So that is the sign of a competitive nature in him. He is competing against the most important person that exists for him to compete against, himself.
Right.
He is met, and that's healthy to a degree. Like he's doing the right thing.
Right.
How much worse would it have been had I yelled out, "Well, why didn't you just watch the ball?
Right.
What What is wrong with you?
Right.
And
Come on, son.
I'm saying these phrases, and now in the light of day, of course, after the fact, they sound really harsh.
Mm-hmm.
But the sad fact and the truth is that while I sat there in the stands, those are the exact words I heard other parents saying to their kids, and they're the exact words I've spoken in the past.
Yeah.
And I want to challenge our dads. I mean, moms too, but this is about dads right now. Your kids hear the words that come out of your mouth with such gravity, such weight, such purpose,
Mm-hmm.
such power. Those words build up or tear down.
Yes.
And in the heat of the moment, while you might say something and completely forget it, the kid won't.
Right.
Sometimes those words that we say in a passionate moment, while they may seem of low value to us, that kid remembers the rest of their life.
Right.
And not only does it become a memory, but it becomes a building block for their life. Like they could adopt that as a pivotal resource to build every decision they make on.
Right.
And if you phrases or questions like what is wrong with you, or you failed,
Right.
or why didn't you do better?
Yes.
We as parents, and I'm guilty,
Mm-hmm.
mm-hmm. We ask that question a lot, the why question, and they don't know why.
Right.
Or why not, or why, and I think one of the most devastating questions that a father can say to his kid, a dad can say to his kid, is what's wrong with you?
Right.
Because it implies, number one, that there's something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, it also illustrates that the person who's supposed to have wisdom in the experience, the dad, doesn't know what's wrong.
Right.
So whatever's wrong with you, it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
And my dad can't even figure it out.
Right.
So then the next implication, the third and the worst part of it is there's no hope.
Wow. That I can see that as a definite final conclusion. Now your kid's hopeless.
When you ask a child
Mm-hmm.
in their developmental stages, what is wrong with you? You've just implied to that kid,
right,
that there's no hope.
So my person, my hero,
yes.
My dad, who I think has all the answers, and all I want is his validation and his approval, is basically giving me everything but that. He's disappointing me because he doesn't know, and then he's looking to me for the answers, and I definitely don't know.
Right.
And so now that disappoints me, and now I'm disappointing him. And I don't know that hope could reach a more of a bottom at a time like that.
There's so much wrong with me that there's no help.
There's no help.
There's no help.
That's right. I remember, and I was raised by a dad that had good fortune. He played college and semi-pro basketball. So, of course, I thought I had to follow basketball, which probably should pick another sport. But I was in early middle school, and I was still kind of storky, how your body's not right in shape yet, but we were trying. And I remember we had this inbounds play, and we didn't know who would quite get the ball, but I'm the one that got it. And I mean, there were seconds left on the clock. And so I grabbed it and I looked toward the goal and I jumped and I basically shot a jump shot. And I'm having to shoot across my body because I'm right-handed. I'm throwing it back the other way, and it clips the side of the backboard and then bounces off into play. And I was just like, oh, and that was really, I only had a few shots that game. And that was, one of just a few, and I blew it, and I think the other team got the rebound. They end up winning. So I'm all disappointed or what have you. And I was all mad at myself. We're in the car. We're going home, just me and my dad. My mom and my sister rode by themselves. And he's like, "You all right?" And I said, "Man, I hit the side of the backboard. How embarrassing is that?" And he goes, He's sitting there thinking, he's looking straight ahead because he's driving. He goes, "Well, I'll tell you this." And I said, "Yes, sir." And, I'm just waiting for anything. And he says, he said, "I'll tell you this." I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "It is never going to go in if you don't shoot it." And I thought, oh, he goes, "Sometimes that's what happens." And so I'm thinking of your son swinging the bat. Well, I can guarantee you this much, son. I know this is the way you talk to him now.
Yeah.
Like I said, we wish we could have done better when our others were younger. Just say, I can guarantee you this. You're never going to hit it if you don't swing. So you got step one down. That's good. And I thought, okay, so what did I do? I went home and I played basketball in the driveway for 2 hours. I was going to make that shot.
That's right.
And so, because he was right. And I used to tell when I coached, I would tell kids things like that. Guaranteed, you're never going to hit the ball if you don't swing. That's a
Right.
fact. And it's never going to go in if you don't shoot it. I don't care if you miss. I care that you have the courage to try.
That's right.
So I just share that story with our audience, and I appreciated him for that. I obviously here I am, almost 50 years later, still telling that same story because that one moment made so much sense. And it's only said. He didn't say anything else. I mean, he may have said, "Hey, I'll do better next time." He probably did throw a little bit of that out, but he didn't have to because what he said made sense. And so there was hope. I can make it. How do I know that there was hope? Because I went home and played basketball for 2 hours outside when the game was over.
Yep. Well, your dad knew the keys to imparting his wisdom into you,
Right.
rather than the burden of trying to fix his mistakes through you.
There you go.
That's a huge, huge deal. Your dad sounds like he had some good parenting, some good practices.
Yeah, something. That's right. And I don't know his sources. I guess his folks or maybe just his experience, but he seemed to at least figure that much out. I'm not saying we didn't have moments, because you're junior high and high school and there's plenty to be disappointed.
We give plenty of opportunities.
But I will say that particular moment, he got that one right. Yeah.
So what I would say, if I could be so bold as to challenge the dads out there, that any of you that may see or hear this episode, that you just slow down a little bit whenever dealing with your kid, especially in a moment where they're learning or it's an opportunity to teach them, and you get a little frustrated. If you could slow down and consider if you were that kid, not the kid that your dad might have said, "What's wrong with you?" Don't say it just because you heard it.
Right.
A lot of times we justify what we do because it was done to us, right?
Yes.
And I'll be honest, I was asked that question. What is wrong with you? I mean, there's a lot wrong with you. Look, but the point is that doesn't make it okay for me to bring that into my parenting relationship with my kid.
Right.
That is not justification just because it was done to me. So what I mean is take hold of the golden rule. The golden rule states that you should do unto others what you would want done to you if the roles were reversed. So put yourself in that kid's place.
Yes.
And think about what would have the most positive impact in that moment.
Right.
And make your decision from there. If you could just slow yourself down, if I could give any challenge or advice, just slow it down a little bit. Replay the scene in your mind before you maybe make a bad parenting call in the moment.
Right. One of my favorite things to do when people come in, maybe it's a couple, but definitely if it's maybe I'm talking to a couple about a child or what have you, and I hear these parents as they're talking about the things they say, the things they've been doing, it's not working. Of course, it sounds a little more about the negatives that we're bringing up today.
Right.
And so I asked them, I say, so where, that's an interesting response to your kid. Where did you get that? Well, I was raised by this kind of dad, a military dad, a refinery dad, or whatever. And I said, okay, so what does that mean? Well, that's the way my parent talked to me. I said, well, you must have liked it because you keep doing it. And then all of a sudden they get that little off stare like, oh, I said, yeah. Why are you repeating what you didn't like?
Yeah.
Surely we can do better than that. And then I have to give, we're in the hope business. I said, let me give you a little hope. The reason you're here is because that's truly what you want. You want it to be better, but it's never going to get any better if you don't try.
That's right.
So the other day, you and I were talking about preparing for certain events and high end attorneys and people like that, people who have these little pockets of heavy influence that could change people's lives, that could win cases or things like that, and that they rehearse. They go over and over and over what they're going to say, the way they're going to say it. They change some of their vernacular a little bit. Like, no, think I could say it better if I use this word. They do that. Well, I encourage you guys as parents, especially dads, moments are going to come. Not too many things are going to come into your world that you can't anticipate. And there's going to be pockets. Your kid doesn't play baseball year round. He has a short season. So prepare. What do you want to say to your child? And how do you want to say it? While you're driving home from work, rehearse. So when it comes from you, it looks almost second nature. And you mean it because you've already kind of edited yourself and confronted yourself and think to yourself, well, if I was 8, is that the way I'd really want to hear it? So now that you're prepared, it comes out so much better. And boy, what an influence that's going to make.
Well, and there's another measuring stick that I use now that I wish I had truly grasped the importance of it when I was a younger dad. And that is that if these were the last words you spoke to them,
Oh,
if this was the last thing, if the next breath was it for you, if it was the last thing you said, but that be the last memory you'd want them to have.
right. Wow.
That seems really kind of dark and gloomy. It's not. It's not.
Right.
You don't know when is your time to go.
Right.
And that kid is your future, your legacy.
Mm-hmm.
That's what will outlive you if all things are equal. So why shouldn't we live that way?
Right.
Why shouldn't we value each moment and each word that we're privileged enough to give to them?
Okay.
So
That's a very good challenge. I like that.
it's a quick way to do it.
Mhm.
If you could just train your thoughts to say, oh, if this is the last word I'm going to say to him or her, is it worth it?
Right.
If not, then don't do it.
Right.
Change it. Make it worth it. So that's a lot of discussion about expectations.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is flip that around. What do we know that our kids expect from us?
Oh.
It's a fascinating thing. We always talk about what we expect from them. We always think about what we expect from them or how we expect them to act and all that kind of stuff. What do they expect?
Oh.
It's a rare thing. We don't think about that as much.
Yeah.
So
So think about what they ask of us then. I mean, typically they ask something I think that could come under a category of, I'm going to call it a provision. Now, ideally, when I think of provision, and I'll probably just like you guys in our audience, I think of stuff. They think of, whether it's an actual item to buy them or
food, clothes,
yeah,
toys.
hey, let's go eat here today or what have you. But they also are looking for, I think, other more, deeper provision,
Safety.
yes, and encouragement, yes, and all those sorts of things. And so I think those things they may not be spoken, but I think they're expectations.
So how often have you dealt with your kid? Well, let's say that you got a 2-year-old.
Oh,
2-year-olds don't, articulate things all so well,
not well.
but they'll cry
Mhm.
or they'll make a face. How often do you know what they mean by it? A lot.
Yes. Yes.
Most of the time, as a parent, you can figure out what those faces mean because you have such a strong bond and a relationship with that kid.
Mhm.
They're showing you what they expect or what they need,
Mhm.
and you're getting it.
Right. And likely because, I mean, obviously you've known them every day of their life. So you know how to evaluate that situation. Okay, is that a hungry face? Is that a I'm dirty, I need help being clean face? I mean, what is that? What is that expression? So we start with the basics. And then once we know that my kid's not hungry, thirsty, and they're clean, then we get to more emotional things. And so just like any other situation, I challenge the intelligence of our audience to break it down behind your eyes before your eyes go all squint and angry. Break it down in your own mind. Let's get to the basics. Is there anything my child needs at this moment they're not getting? And no, their provisions are complete. Now let's get to the more emotional development topics. That would be my challenge.
So, yeah. And I think a lot of times, too, that as our kids age and mature, as they become more and more like us, we start to look at them and we lose sight of what they expect. We start to become more selfish in what we expect. And we stop seeing when the kid is young, 3, 4, and below, they're very dependent.
Yes.
They're very helpless.
Yes.
And you know that there's a huge risk if left to their own devices that they're going to eat something that could hurt them. They're going to put their hand in something that's going to hurt them. They could fall. A lot of things that spell danger for a helpless kid, or they can't feed themselves, or they can't clean themselves, whatever it is. They have a lot of needs that they can't meet on their own. And as they get older, they can meet those needs more and more and more
Yes.
by themselves. So then we start to see our role as just to impart our expectations on them.
Yeah.
And we stop listening, looking, and observing what they need, what they expect,
Right.
and how to be there for them,
Right.
not just to discipline them or to make them conform to what we expect.
I like that. I like that analysis, and I like even that as a challenge. I have oftentimes had teenagers come in their mid to late teens, 15, 16, 17, and they are drifting into, I'll use a word just for emphasis, a more delinquent pattern. And the parents are becoming desperate, and they've done a lot of the things that parents do. They've done a lot of yelling, petitioning, punishing, and nothing seems to be working. So then they drag them in here as if,
Fix it, Chuck.
fix it, Chuck. And so I have to, have to go into the secret closet and grab the magic dust, and I sprinkle it on their kid, and I say, voila. But since that normally doesn't work, I asked the parents to come in at least for the first visit. Give me a fair report. Parents give a report. Kids get to fix all the lies and misconceptions the parents have, which is fine. But by the end of the session, the very first session, I asked your question. I said, okay, young man, typically it's a young man. I said, okay, young man, I go, what are your expectations? I actually use that phrase. What are your expectations? He goes, of what? I go, anything. He said, like, what do you mean anything? And I said, when I say that word, what do you hear? Typically, you know what they typically do? They typically try to pretend they're parents. Well, my parents want this, my parents want that. I go, I didn't ask you what they want. I asked you what you want. And so then I have to help them out. I said, I put that out there so broad. I want you to feel that initially that pressure. But then I start finding, okay, well, what do you expect from yourself as your most important roles? Where do you go all day? Well, I go to school. What do you expect from yourself as a student? And then we get into our activities. Then after we've kind of nursed that for 10 or 15 minutes, then I'll say, well, then what do they expect from you? They want me to start there because that's an easy argument.
Right.
About parents are stupid. My parents are this. My parents are that. I'm like, no, 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 no. We're not. So I knew enough to know, don't start there. That's where they go all the time. Start with you. And if they can't articulate that, I said, well, here's the problem, son. Nature doesn't like a vacuum. And if you don't know how to articulate expectations, then your parents are going to give you expectations until they know what you want. Tell them what you want. And now they may give you feedback and say, okay, son, reasonably speaking, how do you meet that expectation?
Right.
If it's a bit outrageous and the kid goes, I don't know, well, then it's not reasonable yet. And so we basically break it down, it just like we would do. You're never going to hit the ball if you don't swing the bat. Well, if the kid expects to be a home run hitter, break it down. How do you become a home run hitter? And those are oftentimes fun sessions because typically people leave with hopefully better challenges than when they came, because they're at their worst challenges now. They're desperate.
Absolutely.
And desperation is a terrible motivation. And so I use that in part of our expectation, part of our conversation. What do these kids expect from their parents? And we talk about that. What do you expect from them? They go, and I don't know. Well, I expect things from them that maybe you can't fully supply yourself. What would those be? And, well, I mean, then they get it. They break it down. Well, I can't afford a house. I'm still in high school. I can't afford a vehicle. I don't buy my own food by and large. I said, there you go. Now, show some appreciation for those met expectations, and let's see what we get. So that's a little challenge to the kids. Maybe that'll be a subject for another time.
So, in closing, I'd like to issue a challenge, and I'd like you to expand on it if you'd like. But I think we've had a good talk about expectations. The next episode that we get to do next week at 10 o'clock on Tuesday, we're going to talk about respect since we didn't get to do it today.
Okay.
I want to talk about that topic as a father, as a dad, the word respect, the noun respect, and the verb respect. So look forward to bringing that to you guys next Tuesday at 10 o'clock. But to finish this discussion out, I'd like to issue a challenge. The challenge would be that we as dads become promoters of our kids' healthy individual identity by helping them see that they have value on their own, and that we want to know what they expect. What they, not that we have to conform to everything they expect, because sometimes their expectations may be ludicrous.
Right.
But
And let's expect that.
yes, but we as dads, I think it's incumbent upon us to ask them when they're old enough. Even at 5 and 6 and 7 years old, I've been able to talk to our youngest son about what he expects. And it's a fascinating thing to watch this little kid really articulate his inner world to me, which it makes me feel like such a failure about my older kids, though, because I didn't do such a good job. Like I'm really proud of them for the adults they've become. But man, I fail as a dad.
In spite of us.
I mean, oh my gosh.
But I like that though. You validate your youngest son by at least letting him have a first thought.
Yeah.
Then later get him to qualify that thought through 5-year-old conversation. But okay, son, well, how do we make that happen? I don't know, Daddy. Okay, well, let's talk about that. And then now he's learning. He's learning tools. He's not necessarily learning the conclusion.
Because the value that a dad can bring into their kid's life by validating their expectations and their identity subsequently is enormous. That value it's not even measurable. It's so profound, so powerful.
Yeah.
And they crave it.
Yeah.
They crave it. It doesn't matter what gender they are, boys, girls, they crave that validation of their identity, of their individuality, of the value, the worth of their desires.
Right. Individuation, which is that process, it's gonna happen. Friends, it's gonna happen. Your children will individuate from you. Now,
and that's what you want.
Yeah, absolutely. And so your job is to influence that process. That's your ordination. You've been ordained by God to be that person. And I hope you take it serious. I think you do. I think folks who tune into these programs are looking for influence to say, how can I do this better? How can I do this better? And so, but embrace it. Don't be intimidated by it. Even when it looks rebellious, it's not a diss. It's not an indictment of anything you're doing wrong. Maybe you're doing it right, and your child has a little more courage than you anticipated. Now, does it need to just run amok? Absolutely not. You channel that courage, and then eventually their courage goes from kind of rebelling against you and acting out to actually making good decisions. Now you're winning.
Yep. And they will believe in you so much more when you show them you believe in them.
Yes.
And that's not to take away from being a disciplined, structured parent, of having a disciplined, structured household. Both of us believe in that wholeheartedly.
Right.
So don't think that this discussion is any way meant to turn you into a softy parent.
No.
That's not the deal.
No.
So we want kids to be raised in respectful, respectable environments. We want them to be taught structure, discipline, and self-worth.
Yes.
All at the same time. It's about balance. That's really the bottom line.
That's good work.
Successful parenting in the end. No, none of us know the answers.
No.
But the best we can hope for is a proper balance. Wouldn't you say?
Yes, I would.
Well, guys, thank y'all for joining us today. It's been a great discussion. We would love input from you and feedback from you about what's on your mind. We're going to continue this series about being a dad and fatherhood next Tuesday at 10 o'clock. Hope you'll tune in. Please send us a message. We'd love to hear about topics you'd like to discuss in that regard, or even on future shows. I'm Rob.
I'm Chuck.
And thank you for allowing us to become a part of the pursuit of your purpose. Have a great day.